Welcome to the Occult Think Tank. I am your host, Greg, and with me I have Mark Powers. Mark Powers is the former director of Jews for Judaism. I would like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
And
so, where are we?
Well, I was thinking we're going to jump a little bit from our other conversations and move to Daniel, because there is a few things in Daniel that definitely need to be talked about.
Okay.
And the first one comes from somebody that had tried using the term Son of God in the Old Testament for it's talking about Jesus. And what they had quoted was Daniel 3:25, where it says, "He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God."
Mm-hmm.
Christians want to say that that means that's Jesus.
Okay. They can certainly say that. The appearance of the fourth is, and it says, Levar Elohim, which certainly could be translated as like the Son of God. I don't have any problem with that. The only question is, just because, first of all, is that the only place that it refers to someone as the Son of God?
Well, let me do a quick check.
While you're checking, I'll answer the question.
Okay.
The answer is no, that's not the only place that it refers to someone as Son of God, or Sons of God, or what have you.
Well, Son of God only comes up in that one time, but if you put Sons of God, that is, multiple.
Yeah.
Going back to Genesis 6:2, Genesis 6:4, Job 1:6, Job 2:1.
So God has lots of sons.
Okay, what's that?
So if God has lots of sons, which one of them is Jesus? Just this one here?
Okay, who would? But the Son would definitely not be worshipped.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah, because the God is very specific in Isaiah 42:8 that he will not give his glory to another.
Right.
So would they be considered angels, or is that the Jewish people?
No, in this particular case, when we're talking about the Son of God here, it's referring to an angel.
Okay.
I mean, again, we're talking about basically a leap of faith, because someone says Jesus is the Son of God. Therefore, when the term Son of God appears, it must be talking about Jesus. The one just doesn't correspond with the other.
Mm-hmm. It's the leap that we've seen over and over again.
Yeah, but in the same way, if we were to say that I'm a son of God, and Abraham was a son of God, and you're a son of God, you could say that Jesus is the Son of God. But in this particular case, walking in the fire with the 3 men, first of all, it says it's another man. It doesn't say it's a God. And we say it's referring to an angel.
Okay.
So it's
The interesting part.
There's nothing to say. Yes, it says Son of God. Okay. But there's nothing to say that Son of God is Jesus. Son of God is Jesus except the Christian Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're connecting those dots, well, it's probably a logical. Hold on one second. Roxy. It's probably a logical conclusion to come to, but it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Right.
Because why is that particular Son of God Jesus? It's the same way that in Isaiah 53, it refers to the servant, and then all of a sudden the servant is Jesus.
Right. Even though and I've gone through this dance with Christians, because where it says about the servant having his seed and the days of his life being prolonged, the Isaiah 53:10, yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him, he hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper his hand. And I've pointed out to Christians Jesus had no seed, his days weren't prolonged, and the works of his hands were not prospered.
Yep. And the answer is, it's Jesus.
Right. They don't want to look at what doesn't fit. They only want to look at what does.
Well, unfortunately, none of Isaiah 53 fits.
Right.
I don't want to go back to Isaiah 53. We've been there, done that.
Yeah.
But long story short, none of it fits Jesus. Whoever it fits, the one person we know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it doesn't fit is, in fact, Jesus.
Mm-hmm. But on the list from the website that I had gone by at the start of this, they list Daniel chapter 2 verses 34 and 35 as one of the so-called prophecies of Jesus.
Daniel chapter 2?
Yes.
Okay. 34 and 35?
Yes.
Okay. And why is Daniel chapter 2, 34?
And what they have listed on the webpage that will be in the description bar below is stone cut without hands. And it says it is fulfilled in Acts 4 verses 10 through 12.
Yeah, but it goes on. 34 and 35, the stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon its feet, which were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken into pieces together, and became like the shaft of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that no place was found for them. The stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth.
But the next verse says this is the dream.
Yes, this is the dream. Whose dream was it?
Okay, Nebuchadnezzar?
Correct.
Okay, and and Daniel was interpreting the dream?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so what then is the interpretation of it? Interesting here that Daniel calls Nebuchadnezzar King of Kings, who God has given kingdom, power, strength, glory. And after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over the earth, and 4 kingdoms shall be strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and subdues all things, and feet, toes, partially. but they shall not cleave to one another, just as iron does not. I mean, this is a and it's interesting because in verse 45 it says, "The great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter." And the dream is certain, and the meaning of it is sure. So it's a stretch if God is saying that Nebuchadnezzar knew what the dream was and the meaning was made sure. I don't see him jumping up and down and saying, "Yes, here's a perfect vision of Jesus in the future." It's just not there.
Right, and they have as another prophecy is Daniel 2:44 and 45. So
Okay.
pretty much, though I wasn't sure if we should include that, but it does, from looking at it, when you mention 34 and 35, logically one should go all the way through.
Right. Logically, you should. And what's interesting in 44, it says, "In the days of these kings, God of heaven shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it will stand forever. Just as you saw the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke into pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter." So if we're saying that this is a prophecy about Jesus, when it says, if the implication is that this is the kingdom of Jesus, that it shall last forever. Not only hasn't it lasted forever, because forever hasn't come yet, but more importantly, when it says that the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it will break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. We know that several hundred years after Jesus supposedly came, we have the rise of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at very, very least it's problematic in the prophecy of it being this all-consuming kingdom, because while certainly Christianity has spread, there is no doubt about that. Nevertheless, I would say that Islam has spread farther and wider. So is this a prophecy about Muhammad?
Interesting.
I don't think so, but
Yeah, no.
Could somebody make that case?
They could try to, just like Christians try to make it about Jesus.
Right, and I can assure you that Islam does.
Oh, okay. Well, the next that we have, we jump a bit with Daniel to Daniel 7.
Yeah.
Starting at verse 13, but that goes, there's 3 of them that are 13 and 14, and then there's one that's 27.
Okay. 13 and 14 and 27, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. And I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like a son of man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and kingdom, that all the people, nations, and tongues shall serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed.
Yeah.
And that's Jesus.
Christians want to claim that it is.
Well, because they say he came in the clouds.
Yes.
And again, I'm from Missouri, Shelby.
Yeah.
None of it has happened. He certainly. The biggest question I have about this one is, if Christianity claims that Jesus is God, then why is God giving him a kingdom?
That doesn't make any sense.
No, because if he already has dominion over everything as God or as a part of God, then why is God giving him a kingdom? Doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, because especially if you have this Trinity idea that Christians love,
Yeah.
and they want to say that it's not three separate beings but one.
Well, that's the question. Is it three separate beings or is it one?
Well, because one of the things that I mentioned in regards to that, it goes back to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, where it says a man will leave his father and mother and will cleave to his wife, and they will be one flesh.
Right.
I ask, is a husband and wife one person?
Sort of fun. Well, the implication there is that it ties in with another verse, and that verse is the Jewish statement of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the implication is, here you have in two verses the use of the word echad, one. Man shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Right.
They shall be one flesh. Well, what have we got? We've got a compound unity here, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
So since we have a compound unity, so when it says in Deuteronomy, the Lord is one, so therefore, since we have a compound unity, then clearly the concept of a Trinity is not a foreign concept. And that's exactly what that statement in Deuteronomy is saying, because how many times does it say God?
Well, in that, it has the Lord our God.
The Lord is...
And
Lord is what?
One. Yeah, but it does have the Lord twice and God once. And both of the Lords are in all capitals, at least in English.
So, since it says Lord or God three times, and then says the three times are one, and uses the word echad as the one, so you have three times God equals how many?
3 times 1 is 3.
Yeah, but if you're talking about a compound unity, what do you got?
Well, I know Christians would be pretty much jumping for joy that that's a Trinity.
Yes, except there is one minor little problem with that whole concept. And the minor little problem with that whole concept is that they don't have an understanding of Hebrew. And the concept that they have is that the word echad means one, a compound unity. But that's not the case. Because echad means one, but it can also mean, based upon the context, an absolute singular, not compound unity. Where do we have that as an example? We have it in the story of the plagues in Egypt. And if you remember that one of the plagues was locusts.
Yes.
And the locusts came in, and Pharaoh relented, and he agreed to let the Jewish people go. And so God caused the wind to come out of the, I think it was out of the west, and it blew the locusts out of the land of Egypt until there was not left one locust. Now, is that a compound unity? Because the word that's used there is the word echad. Same word as in basar echad, that man shall cleave to his wife and become one flesh. The same way that it says in Deuteronomy, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What you have here is context being very, very important. And the context here is that it's an absolute one, and it is an absolute one when it comes to how many locusts were left in Egypt.
Now, one thing you said about the wind coming out of the west, I do want to point out, Exodus 10:13, it says, Moses stretched forth the rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day.
Sorry, I didn't remember if it was east or west.
Well, you had a 50-50 chance of getting it right.
I know. 50-50, I always get it wrong. But the wind came, blew them away, and there was not left, what does it say? Continue the verse. How many were left in Egypt?
And in verse 14, the locusts went up over the land of Egypt, and the rest in the coast of Egypt. Very grievous were they.
No, wait a minute. Are you talking about the first wind when they came, or the second wind when they were blown away?
I think
you're talking about when they came in.
Okay, maybe.
So you need the other half of it where they go out.
Okay, and I'm looking down. And
okay, give me the verse that you were at.
I was at verse 13 and 14 of Exodus 10.
Exodus 10, verse 13 and 14.
Yeah.
And
oh, in verse 19 it says a west wind.
Oh, there we go. I was right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens? What happens after the west wind comes? Very strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the sea of Suf.
The Red Sea.
But the next says there remained
not one locust in all the coast of Egypt.
The word that's used here for one is the word echad. So how many were left? The compound unity of locusts, or there wasn't even one?
Okay, there wasn't even one.
Yeah. So context is very, very important. And in the context here, how many locusts were left?
None.
One. And in the context of God, it's very, very clear from everything that God says that He is not a compound unity. He is a singularity, and there is no other gods before Him.
Right, and it's one I can quote that in multiple places in the Jewish Bible where the God clearly says he is one. And even what I find kind of funny as an atheist, where it says about there are no gods but me.
Yep.
And that is one that it really rips the legs out from under the Christian claim, because, and where I'm talking about for those that are...
Unless, of course, you continue to say that God is this compound unity, and that, the three are one. But I think it's clear from context that three are not one.
Right. And also the aspect of where it also takes away the need for a devil because of I kill, I make alive, I wound, I heal.
Yep.
The God is doing both the good and the bad. It encompasses both.
Yes, that's correct.
But getting back to where we were with Daniel, there is, after 13 and 14, because those would be a matter of, it wouldn't be the dream that was talked about in Daniel 2, but because I think we got a little bit I think I got sidetracked with something with 13 and 14. Yeah, that is a vision of like the Son of Man, which would be, is that angels or, well, the Son of Man came in the clouds, so that would be angels?
Yes.
Okay. And why is the switch between Son of Man and Son of God?
Why does it switch?
Yeah, in Daniel 3, it mentioned Son of God. In Daniel 7, it's saying Son of Man.
Right. Okay. Great question. And what you're basically looking at is how this individual is talked about. In Daniel 2, he talks about Son of Man, yes?
Yes.
Because it's referring specifically to earthly kings and things that are going to happen to these earthly kings. In Daniel 3, it's talking about Son of God because it's specifically talking about an angel who's not earthly.
Okay.
So you have a distinction between them.
Now, one of the things we're going to have to get to in the future is about the idea of angels and the subject of free will and their choice. Because I think that will factor into a lot of this. And I know you had told me before we started today that Daniel 9 is a big subject and that should be all in itself.
Yes.
Which, that's what we have after this, so I'll leave that for the next time. But since we're on the subject of angels and things like that, in a sense, let's shift to that and let me understand, or help me and my audience understand how angels are looked at in Judaism.
Okay. Essentially, angels, as is mankind, a creation of God. And after all, God created everything. So he created man, he created angels. What makes a man different than an angel different than a man, is God gave to mankind the gift of free will. We can choose to mess up. An angel does not have that choice. An angel does not have free will. An angel can only do what God allows him to do. And we have examples of that in Job, I think it's in Deuteronomy. We have it in many, many places. So it's one of the reasons why Judaism and Christianity part the ways when it comes to the discussion of Satan, Satan. Because our concept is that Satan is nothing more than an angel. Not a fallen angel, I might add, because that concept doesn't exist anywhere in the Jewish Bible. When you go into Isaiah 11, I don't know if we talked about that one before or not, but story about the fallen angel is a figment of the imagination of King James and his translators. In the Hebrew, it does not exist. In Isaiah, it does not exist.
Oh, I think you mean Isaiah 14.
14, I'm sorry, correct. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
because I
you
don't know
know,
if we talked about that in an interview, because I know we talked about it privately.
well, we should go back. We should go back and talk about that at some point in time,
Okay.
because that's something that's clearly pointed out as look, Satan controls this world and so forth, and here's the proof of it. The problem is it's all smoke and mirrors, and it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the concept, the Jewish concept of an angel as this being created by God, who are essentially servants of God and can only do what God tells them or allows them to do. God tells angels to do all sorts of things, like go and tell this one to do this, go tell that one to do that. Or as in Job, God allows Satan to do anything he wants to Job except.
Mm-hmm.
So Satan doesn't have any free will. He doesn't have the ability to do whatever it is his little heart desires. He can only do what God permits him to do. And so that's really the difference between man and angel. And that is that mankind has the ability to mess up and mess up badly, while an angel does not have that ability because they can only do what God tells them to do or permits them to do.
Well, one of the things I'm curious about, because it's an analogy that came to my mind in regard to Satan, is
Uh-huh.
the idea of, as an adversary, it would be like the sand in an oyster or the heat and pressure on a piece of coal to make a diamond. That
Okay.
we need that opposition in order to push us to being better than we have been, to
Okay.
exceeding. Is that
You can
accurate?
certainly make that case. I don't know if it's necessarily true. Clearly, that's Satan's role. His role is to be in opposition to all sorts of things,
Mm-hmm.
not just mankind, but everything in general. And does that make us stronger? I guess you could say that. It reminds me of a story that when I was traveling to Russia, I had somebody who said to me that the Jewish people are like Shemen Zayis. What's Shemen Zayis? Shemen Zayis is pure olive oil. And the analogy is that an olive, number one, not very attractive, number two, maybe in fact bitter, and so forth and so on. But if you press the olive, if you squeeze it, I think that was the term that you just used.
Mm-hmm.
If you squeeze it, so forth and so on, what comes out? What comes out is pure olive oil, which is sweet and good and so forth and so on. So I think it's a very good analogy for what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it applies to the Jewish people, because after all, have we been pushed and pressed and so forth and so on throughout the years,
Throughout history, yes.
throughout history, yes.
Now, one of the things that also comes to mind in the aspect of an opposer is the idea of a football team or a baseball team. The one side is opposing the other.
Right. Yeah, but the football team, the baseball team, they're opposing the other in kind of a I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z situation. I don't see that in this particular case.
So Satan
Because
doesn't have an agenda in that regard?
he doesn't have an agenda. So
Okay.
I guess you could look at Job and say, yeah, he has an agenda. What's his agenda? His agenda actually is to prove God wrong. How is he going to prove God wrong? He's going to prove God wrong because God is so proud of his servant Job, and Satan says, no big deal here because you give everything to Job. He's got it all, but if you take it away from him, see how fast he curses your name.
Well, in that regard, I could look at it and I've said the same thing in a sense about how Christians treat a God, because their prayers and everything that they try and go to this God about is what they want happening in their life. That they're treating God like a genie in a bottle.
Mm-hmm. Rub the bottle and he'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, and I have said that if such would exist, that would have to be insulting as hell.
Well, you're going to love this one. The old statement that there are no atheists in a foxhole.
Yes.
The Jewish concept of praying to God is really not so much caught up in, God, I want this, I want that, help me with this, help me with that. The Jewish concept of praying to God, and we pray 3 times a day, every day, and the concept is one of saying thank you to God, not necessarily asking God for anything, in particular, although there's nothing wrong with going to God and saying, help me out here. But that's not what prayer for us is, because everybody turns to God when they need help. The old no atheist in a foxhole. But we believe that it's important to turn to God when you don't need help, to recognize that we continue to exist because God wants us to. All God has to do is figuratively snap his fingers, and your heart could stop beating. So our concept is to say thank you to God for everything at all times, and that's essentially what we're involved in when we are praying to God, saying thank you for allowing me to exist, thank you for that heartbeat, thank you for just about anything.
But that strikes me as the God being, narcissistic. That it would need to have a constant validation and praise.
Nobody says that God needs it. We're just saying that we need to recognize that we're here because God wants us to be here. And so we say thank you.
Okay. What about the aspect, and this is a thought that had come to my mind before, because I had done a video a while back when I was doing things on my other channel of perception. That if a God would exist, and for the sake of this I will just use the aspect of talking as if one does, but wouldn't it would be perceiving things much like we do, in the aspect of everything we perceive in our life is with us at the center of it. That everything is around us.
Okay.
And much like how if you take and look at the universe, that the universe is expanding uniformly in all directions from the point of any star. That when you have any point that you identify as this is the center point, it's expanding uniformly in every direction.
Okay.
So that the way everything would be perceived would be from us as center point. But where it gets weird with a God is, could a God theoretically be perceiving things not just from its point of view, but simultaneously being able to look at things from the point of view of every single living thing?
All right. Let me see if I can digest that, wrap my little mind around it.
Yeah, because it's a wild concept.
Well, no, I don't think it's that wild, because if you go with the concept that God is everywhere at all times, then clearly God is not centered in one particular place. And if God is not centered in one particular place, it's unusual to come up with the concept of God seeing everything at all times. Does that make sense?
Well, if the God is not centered in one spot, then it would be more like the ocean. That a drop of water in the ocean is as much the ocean as the rest of the drops. But that it would be the entire mass. That the way I'm looking at it is that the concept of God would be almost anthropomorphizing either water in the ocean, or oxygen, or basically anything that is everywhere. And from that point of view, it would make every person, every living thing, not just every human, but every human, animal, every living thing would be as much a part of God as anything else. So it really raises like the aspect of a God sending people to hell or whatnot, or even having a hell. It raises the question of how could it do that and separate itself, or the idea of hell is separation from God. How do you have separation from that which is everywhere?
Right. Also a good question. But let's see if I can verbalize this one. While God is everywhere, and from God, we are not God. God is separate and distinct, in spite of the fact that He is everywhere. I don't know. I'm thinking more along the lines of a membrane in the air. You know, the air is there on both sides, but there's a membrane separating. I don't like the analogy. I need to develop that one.
Okay.
All right, but
because, well, the aspect of a membrane type of thing, that would get me to thinking more along the lines of cellular. That on a cellular level.
Which is why I wasn't really thrilled with it, but it's the first thing that popped into my mind. Let's say I need to think about this one.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's a great question. Again, while God is everywhere, He is not the table and chairs. He is not the lamp. He is not the clock. He is not all sorts of things. He's not the dog, the cat, the horse, the elephant. and so forth while he created them, and he is everywhere. He is not, in essence, part of that.
Wouldn't it feel everything that they feel, theoretically?
Theoretically, like Bill Clinton, I feel your pain?
I guess in a sense, yes. But in a more almost literal way of that, and I guess it goes to a almost Buddhist type of thought of if you harm someone else, you're harming part of yourself.
Yeah, I understand. So let's flesh this out a little bit.
Okay.
So if I feel your pain, what exactly does that mean?
Well, that's empathy.
So can God empathize?
Well, I think it would be when I use the aspect of referring to a God feeling it, it wouldn't be as much empathy as it would, because of God being part of everything. Then it would have to, like when I was at work and I grabbed
When something fell on your toe, God went ouch.
Well, it would have felt the pain that I felt, like when I reached down to grab spaghetti jars, and I didn't realize one was broken, and there was a piece of glass, and it cut my hand. That God would have felt what I did, or later in that same truck when I threw a piece of cardboard and got a cardboard cut on my hand, it would have felt that too. Not so much like it was happening to it, or that it was happening to me, but that it was happening to itself.
Again, I'm having a problem. I'm having a problem with God being in everything. I said God is everywhere, but I didn't say God is everything. If I take that to its natural extension, if I knock over a chair and God is in everything, God is in that chair, so God feels the chair as it goes bump on the floor. That's not what I'm saying.
Right, but
God is everywhere.
Well, the chair doesn't have any feelings per se because it doesn't have the nerve endings.
How do you know that?
Because
have you ever asked the chair how it feels?
It doesn't have. We can examine a chair or the desk that I am at. It is just the wood. It doesn't have any nerve endings or a brain to send signals to.
So you need those things.
Because without those, you don't have any sensation of pain or pleasure. Because my uncle, who's a quadriplegic, has no feeling from like his chest down.
Right.
And there was one point I had heard about. He was in his wheelchair and his foot had slipped off of the one rest that it sits on, and he didn't know it. And part of his foot got damaged because he was just moving and did not feel anything because he had no feeling there.
Right.
So without when the signals are interrupted, it's to the mind of that organism, it is as if that does not exist.
So when this was happening to your uncle, God didn't feel it because there was no feelings in your uncle.
Right, because of him being a quadriplegic and the sensations.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just asking.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about empathy, then clearly God could not empathize because your uncle wasn't feeling it.
Right. It's not so much empathy when we're talking about it from God. It would be more of I don't know if it would be a transference or I'm not even sure we have a word for what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about a connection of some kind?
Yes, to use the term, an intimate connection that would have what we experience being also experienced by God, but this raises in broader implications because then it's one of this God would feel both sides of an argument, both sides of a physical fight. It would feel both sides of a murder, a rape, anything.
Okay.
And that type of emotion would fry our brain. We would not be able to deal with that. Both sides of the sensory input would overload us.
Okay.
But it would also give a type of understanding regarding each person, because if God would be perceiving reality from each person's point of view, then it would understand the whys as to why they are doing what they're doing, as well as from a counterpoint of view of why it is opposed or not liked from, in a sense, every possible angle.
Okay.
What do you, I mean, this is, in a sense, this is a very new age type of.
Well, my initial reaction is this. You know, when we talk about feeling both sides of something, to what end? I'm just having a problem grasping, because if we're talking about a murder, the person who commits the murder, the person who's murdered, right? Why does God have to feel anything whatsoever?
Because of its part.
I'm not saying he does, he doesn't. I'm just asking the question of why he has to feel anything whatsoever.
Because if he doesn't feel anything at all, then logically, then he doesn't exist. Because anything that would exist and would be everywhere would have to be part of and experiencing with a life, an animal, a person, whatnot, what they feel.
I think I've seen this on Star Trek. I'm grasping for words here because the concept is problematic. In that you're redefining a concept of God, and I think that's what the problem is.
Well, I don't look at it as redefining. I look at it as strictly like hypothesizing or.
Okay, yeah, but what I'm saying is that there is a definition of God that doesn't include this. Yeah, we can speculate as much as we want, but nowhere that I'm aware of in the definition of God does this particular concept exist, and that's why I'm having trouble grasping it in any way, shape, or form. Because what you're doing is you're taking something and applying it, which I don't think applies, and that's really my problem.
Well,
Because
if a God is everywhere, all at once,
yeah,
and in a sense, wouldn't it have to be part of everything?
no, that's the concept of, you mentioned Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Don't step on that ant, because you don't know who that ant was, and so forth and so on.
Right.
That's not our concept. And while we are created in God's image, and the soul that we have comes from God, that doesn't make us God in any way, shape, or form.
What about a part of God?
Well, which part?
Maybe the big toe?
Thinking something a little higher.
Well, I don't get too high there. There's some parts I don't want to be that.
Well, I was thinking more along the pinky.
Oh, okay. Well,
Don't put words in my mouth. That we are a part of God. I think it's more. It's more that we have something from God in us, not that we are a part of God.
but if we have something from God in us,
Yeah.
then wouldn't that, by extension, make us, in a sense, gods?
No, because if you have a gift from somebody in your house, does that make your house that person?
No, but you have a part of them.
You don't have something. You have a part of them. You have a gift from them. And something from them, but not necessarily a part of them. So it comes down to the question of, is soul a part of God, or is it a gift from God?
Well, and
And on that note, we're going to have to come back to it, because I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's something that I would be curious to see what thoughts that the listeners have regarding the whole line of thought that we went to. So, for everyone, feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people, and thank you, Mark.
No problem.